But the other thing is the chat, which is down below. We're asking everybody to put their name in there and their organization, and if you wish, your email, also the city you live in, just so we have an idea of where the ideas come from. We also will be using the chat throughout the meeting today. The National Park Service is going to lead a SWOT analysis, and so practice using that chat down below right now. We ask that people keep their microphones on mute unless if you're speaking. And it's just your call if you want to have your video on. If you are speaking, we certainly ask you to keep your video on. But it's sometimes nice to see everybody. So if you have the bandwidth, certainly leave your video on. We are going to have a discussion period afterwards, and you're more than welcome to put questions or stuff in the chat. But during our SWOT analysis, we're asking you to keep those to specific ideas and save your questions for our discussion period at the end of it. Our goal is to finish by 11 o'clock, but many of the organizers will stay online, that if people want to continue the conversation afterwards, you'd be more than welcome to do this. As an introduction, you know, my partner, Russ Barnett, my colleague, not my partner, my colleague, Russ Barnett, and I have taught a class for the past semester at the University of Louisville that's focused on this Rivertown Review. And we're very fortunate to work with the National Park Service and to help our students really connect with the river and to sort of think about recreation from a comprehensive viewpoint. We've had a series of just fascinating guest speakers. We've had a series of field trips and some fascinating reading. And so this Rivertown Review is a bit different than the other Rivertown Reviews. We still have had individuals come in and join us, but much of the digital review of the websites and much of the site visits were done by the students as part of the class. And you'll hear from them at 10 o'clock, and I'm looking forward to it tremendously. This work is also part of the Ohio River Recreation Trail. And we have two colleagues online right now, Mr. Jack Sutton and Mr. Brewster Rhodes. Three of us are co-chairs of the Ohio River Recreation Trail, and it's our dream really to create a recreational corridor from Portsmouth on down to West Point, Kentucky. But I'd like to introduce my two colleagues, Jack Sutton, who is he's co-chair for Indiana, even though here I'm facilitating this workshop. I'm co-chair for Kentucky, and Brewster Rhodes is co-chair for Ohio. So Brewster or Jack, why don't you have a few comments and take it away?
Great, thank you so much, David. And Jim, thank you for hosting us today. I see we've got 46 people online right now. So you win the prize. You're the biggest Rivertown Review venue we've had so far. So congratulations on that. I know we're gonna have a lot of really great discussion today. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am one of the three co-chairs representing Indiana. I actually reside in Aurora, Indiana, which is about 25 miles downstream of Cincinnati. Professionally, my background is landscape architecture, but for the last 33 plus years, I've spent my professional career in the world of parks. So I'm a park guy. I'm a river rat. I like to paddle. I like to cycle. I love to hike the ridges along the Ohio River here in Southeast Indiana, Southwest Ohio. What I'm really looking forward to today, Jim, is to hearing more from obviously the students at U of L and learning more about your parts of the river, because we're going to be hosting a similar venue or similar Rivertown Review next spring with several communities here in Southeast Indiana, namely Dearborn County Regional Tourism, the City of Lawrenceburg, and Main Street of Aurora have teamed up with a joint application to do a Rivertown review similar to what you're doing. So if you don't mind, I'm going to steal as many good ideas as I can hear today from you and help bring those back to some of the folks here in Southeast Indiana. We're also working with the city of Rising Sun, which is a small little river town. It's about 10 miles downstream from Aurora, and we'll be hosting a Rivertown review hopefully in December. COVID has sort of interrupted a lot of our schedules this fall, but we hope to get that wrapped up before the end of the year. One of the magical things about the Ohio River Recreation Trail, and I'm going to hand it off to Brewster, is that we really are a necklace, if you will. If you think of Portsmouth to Louisville, and each little community is a gem on that necklace. And what the Ohio River Recreation Trail is trying to do is bring light to those gems, shine them up a little bit with this Rivertown review process, and help all of us thrive going forward in bringing more ecotourism to our river corridor region. So with that, let me turn it over to my friend and co-chair, Brewster Rhodes.
Thanks so much, Jack. And Jim, thank you once again for pulling together this wonderful cross-section of leadership from your community. And we really do look forward to collaborating with you and using this event as a model for replication as we do additional Rivertown reviews throughout the region. I live in Cincinnati. I'm the co-chair of the operation for the state of Ohio for the Ohio River Recreation Trail. Also been very deeply engaged with an organization that's one of our lead sponsors called Adventure Crew, which is a nonprofit in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area that gets urban teens outside into nature. And we run what's become the largest paddling event in the country, the Ohio River Paddle Fest, which draws about 2,000 people to paddle 9 miles on the Ohio with no power boats and barges. So it's a playtime for paddlers on the Ohio, but it's a great way. It has become a great way. This will be our 20th anniversary to introduce people to the beauty and majesty of this great river. And so clearly, you know, the Ohio is an incredible resource. It's the reason our communities were founded. It's a source of drinking water for most of us along this trail, this necklace that Jack describes. It's also the postcard that visitors send home when they come and check our place out. And our goal is to create, as Jack is suggesting and laying out, a destination for not only local folks, for folks throughout the Midwest, but a national destination for people wanting to have a very unique adventure experience to literally jump in the river, paddle it, power boat it, cycle it along its shoreline, fish it. But instead of traveling abroad or out to the wonderful Rocky Mountains there in Colorado, Derek, but to see in their own backyard, to take a staycation in some ways without having to spend the time, or especially during this challenging period, the risk of traveling to distant spots, but to jump into their own backyard, explore the unique communities and the history they all offer, the recreational assets that they have, that they're increasingly interested in shining up and making even more attractive for people who are into adventure tourism. So we are excited about this project. We're really excited, especially about the partnership we have with the National Park Service. About a year and a half ago, we applied and were the recipients of a very competitive grant process, not money, but technical assistance. So we are extremely grateful to have the National Park Service partner with us. And in Cincinnati, the only other National Park Service presence is an historical home for President Taft. So anyway, it's exciting to have National Park Service be engaged in the greater Cincinnati area. And finally, we are working very closely with our colleagues in Northern Kentucky who have organized themselves around what's called the South Bank Partners Organization. And Jim, I'm sure, is very familiar with, but that brings together Covington, Newport, Bellevue, Ludlow, and Bromley, and Dayton, Kentucky, to create an organization that's building out a world-class bicycle trail system and increasingly opening up access to the Ohio for recreational, for paddlers and power boaters. And they see that as a way to make their communities much more attractive for their own residents, for additional investment, and improve the health and quality of life for their own residents. So we look forward to sharing what we're learning by working with them, and obviously sharing, Jim, what you guys are doing and bringing those lessons back. So now I'd like to turn it over to Andrea Ireland with the National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, who's just marvelous. We love working with Andrea and, of course, her sidekick, Russ. So take it away, Andrea.
Thank you, Brewster, for that wonderful introduction. I am Andrea Ireland. I am with the National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, Conservation Assistance Program. RTCA is a program of the Park Service that goes out into communities and helps them to get projects done, helps them to help themselves to look at outdoor recreation, conservation, organizational development, all types of things, and taking that second half of the mission of the National Park Service out into communities. I am stationed in Ohio, and usually at Cuyahoga Valley National Park, but I work all over the state of Ohio, now Indiana, and a little bit of Pennsylvania. And I'm thrilled to be working with Russ Clark, who you will hear from a little bit later. He is my counterpart in Kentucky, and also Helen Sewers, who is helping us logistically, and Faith Welty, who is a Conservation Legacy Fellow, possibly, yes, who's working with us as well. So it takes a team to make this happen. The RTCA program has been working. Whoa, something's happening there. The RTCA program has been, is everybody else seeing my screen doing weird things? No? Hold on a second.
Your audio's fine.
Yeah, my audio's fine. I can just keep talking.
Just keep talking. You're flashing on and off, so we are attracted to your picture. So go ahead.
So part of working with the Ohio River Recreation Trail has been the development of this Rivertown Review program. The Ohio River Recreation Trail is long, and it's a very ambitious plan to connect outdoor recreation through paddling and bicycling and all the other opportunities that it can present for the entire length of what we're now focused on, from Portsmouth to West Point. And so part of our Rivertown Review program has been to engage the communities along the trail so that they can realize and benefit from the types of outdoor recreation that we think is available to them, how to better capture that. So the Rivertown Reviews are a fresh set of eyes on your community. We do have an application process. We have selected the first 3. Well, actually it's 4 because of this group. And we do desktop reviews. We do visitor assessments where we go out and visit the town. We tour with the town hosts. We have a community meeting, which is what this is. And then we provide an assessment as a follow-up. And we hope to eventually have a Rivertown Review Summit where we gather all of the communities together to learn from everyone's challenges and successes and some best management practices to leverage all of the communities on the Ohio. We are also doing this in conjunction. Oh, I wanted to say that usually we would do this. It was our plan in the beginning to do this in person, because we really like to get out and meet with the partners, see the community, be on the ground, and get a fresh set of eyes out there with some ideas. Unfortunately, it's not able to happen that way, but we're making the best out of this virtual situation. And I'm really pleased to see 48 participants on today's call. That's amazing. Another layer of National Park Service that is involved with the Ohio River Recreation Trail is the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. So while everyone knows about Lewis and Clark out west, they also had a recently expanded eastern route that they did before they got out west. So that was designated just last year as part of the National Historic Trail of Lewis and Clark. And we have a representative from Solimar International. Derek Schimmel is going to talk about the online tool that they have as part of the Lewis and Clark Trail. So it's great that the National Park Service program of RTCA has the opportunity to work with the Lewis and Clark Trail. So Derek.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. I see a lot of familiar names here of folks that I've spoken with over the last 7 or 8 months. So Jim, I know you and I have a conversation. I see Clint on the line, representatives from Fallsley, Ohio, some representatives from Jefferson. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen really quickly here so that we can keep a close eye and have some visuals to go along with what I am going to say. So, as Andrea said, I am a representative of the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. We were contracted, my company is Solimar International. Solimar is a sustainable tourism consulting firm. We work on projects usually in developing nations around the world to help build out tourism in a sustainable way, with focuses on conservation in the economy, in the economics of places, and the culture of places. We were really thrilled to be contracted by the National Park Service for this particular project, in that it helps us to work at home in our backyard and really helps us to bridge the gap between the past and the present here in the United States. Many people know about the story of the Lewis and Clark Lewis and Clark Trail and the core discovery. But oftentimes that education doesn't stretch beyond that 4th and 5th grade education that we learned in school. So what we're trying to do here is educate the American public, educate the stakeholders, especially those that live along the trail, as you can see here, and help, as I said, to bridge the gap between the past and the present. So again, what is sustainable tourism for development? Why is it that we're doing this? So as I said, it starts with sustainable tourism for economic growth and cultural preservation. So we want to keep the tourism dollars inside of your communities, inside Clark and Floyd counties, steer away from the McDonald's and the Marriotts of the world, and really get inside of Main Street, inside of the places, the beds and breakfasts, the restaurants, all those Rivertown galleries and organizations that give the heartbeat and soul of your particular place. And then, of course, there's the environmental protection as well. So being along the rivers, the genealogy of the Ohio River, it's changed greatly over the years. And we want to make sure people understand how those rivers are changing, what effects the commercial traffic has, the benefits of outdoor recreation and paddling rivers. So it's really bringing together all of these 3 different sections of conservation as they relate to tourism. Why does tourism matter? Why is it that we're focusing so much this particular program, the Lewis and Clark program, on geotourism and ecotourism? You can see the many different sections of, on the left side here, from cultural preservation to 1 in 10 jobs being from tourism, 30% of service exports. And then on the right side here, we have our wheel. Again, it's everything that we see on the left, but brought all together. And it shows with tourism as the center here, that it's a really unique type of industry that people can get behind, work together towards a similar goal. And again, with this particular case, inside of the destinations in Southern Indiana, it's keeping everything inside of the community. So keeping it as localized as possible. And that's really the ultimate goal of geotourism and what we're doing along the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail, and why we're involved with ORRT. So what is content marketing? What is it that we're actually going to be doing here, and why am I even speaking to you right now? So as I showed you at the beginning, we have this map. Ultimately, this is a really low-hanging fruit, a really easy way for businesses and stakeholders to get involved in our program. And ORRT has a very similar program, which they'll be showing you a little bit later. For businesses, sites, attractions, we want to get this number right here, the 93 and the 32, higher. We want to get these numbers to grow by getting businesses inside of Clark and Floyd counties live on our website. It's a completely free program. It's a free marketing opportunity, and it's a free partnership with the National Park Service. And ultimately what it does at its absolute core, if we really need to simplify things, it's a TripAdvisor for the Lewis and Clark Trail. It allows you to tell your story, promote your product, and bring guests in as they are traveling through the Eastern Corridor, the Eastern expansion of the Lewis and Clark Trail. So jumping back, it's all based on content marketing. You can see the definition here, but at the end of the day, it starts with storytelling. It starts and ends with storytelling. We want you to be the storyteller for your destination, for your business, and do your best to share in your words why it is that visitors should be coming inside of your place, inside of your community, inside of your business. You can see here, this is actually a site in North Dakota that we use as an example. This is one of our first sites. Now we're up to 550 sites, and with your help, hopefully we'll be able to get up to 600 by the end of the year. So this here, again, is a historic site in North Dakota. You can see here, it shows a pinpoint on the map of where it is. And then it gives you a picture of the place and a definition of what it is, and then all the contact information on the right side here. So what are the goals of the program? And I'm going to jump over to the site here shortly just to give you a really quick rundown of what it is. So why is it that we're doing this? As I said, it builds community-based constituencies of people who feel connected to the trail and also connected to each other. I think that one of the biggest benefits of this program, which was unintended, was that we get people in a room from communities from all different walks of life. Prior to COVID, we were traveling and doing these meetings in person, and we'd see everyone from police officers to librarians to business owners, restaurateurs, bed and breakfast owners, everybody in a room together, kind of, in a sense, airing their grievances, but ultimately realizing that they are all after the same goal, which is community unity. And in this particular case, as it relates to geotourism, bringing tourism in, visitors in a sustainable way. So jumping down there, we have to engage active participation in sharing these sites, attractions, and heritage and stories that make a region unique. To grow the local economies, as I said, that's the economic arm is a really big piece of it. And then linking past history to current traditions and cultures. The best example I like to give here is we will have a site that's based around the history of the Lewis and Clark Trail. So we'll say Falls of the Ohio. We have some folks that are going in, learning about the history there, touring the park. 5 o'clock rolls around. We want them to stay inside of your community and patronize a local restaurant, drink a local beer. If you're in Kentucky, go to a local distillery. Get inside of the community. So we're helping to really do our best to bridge the past to the present. And then the benefits, as I mentioned earlier, those who participate will be featured on our website. At its very core, it's a free marketing opportunity. You have the ability to create your own page, upload your own content, edit at your convenience. So if you're a restaurant owner, if you are a river outfitter and you have certain specials that are happening for a particular week or month, or your restaurant menu is changing, you can update this content as you see fit. And those that are approved will receive a decal to display on their storefront, as well as a digital badge for their website and social media channels. We also have a newsletter that you'll be able to help to share different items and different pieces of content to help promote the product and promote your business. So I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint here and jump quickly to the website so you can see exactly what it is we're doing. So jumping out, this is the whole map. You can see everything here of the different regions. So if we jump in here, we can see where exactly we are. So this is Ohio. I'm going to jump out and go towards southern Indiana. So you can see the many different places that we have along the river. And if we jump here, this is where we want you to get involved. So as you can see, we have 3 different places north of the Ohio here in Jeffersonville. So we have the Howard Steamboat Museum. We have Clark County, Indiana, which is just generally the site for the page for the particular county there, and then Falls of the Ohio State Park. So what we're going to be sending along is information how you can sign up, and we want to build these bubbles out. If we go south here in Louisville, we can see the many different sites that they have, lots of different bubbles, from the Louisville Slugger Museum to OneDrive. This is a kind of go-karting type virtual tour that people offer. This town of Louisville in general. We have the York statue. York was one of the important members of the Corps Discovery. Really interesting story. So as you can see here, it's a really interesting linkage between those sites that are heavily involved and have a deep history with Lewis and Clark and those that don't. So if you are listening right now and you say my business or my restaurant really has no affiliation with Lewis and Clark or the history of it, that's fine. Geotourism, the core is geo, and we want as many people involved as possible so that we can gain a following and again, ultimately achieve this similar goal of achieving sustainability inside of the communities. So with that, I will send a link in the chat box for registration, and we'll be reaching out after the session to give more information, but really
Right.
thrilled to be talking to you, and I will pass it back over to you, David, or Andrea.
Thank you very much, Derek. So what we're showing you here are some tools that you can use to actively promote tourism and recreate on the Ohio River. And thank you, Derek, for that great overview. It's a wonderful site, that Lewis and Clark Geotourism site. We also have David Rudder. He's with OKI, which is Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, a regional planning organization, to talk about another tool. David?
Good morning, everyone. All right, so sharing my screen here. So I'm here today to talk to you about the Ohio River Recreation Trail Digital Guide. And this was a guide that our organization, we are the MPO for the Cincinnati region. But I'm also an avid paddler and been involved in Paddle Fest for several years and connected with Brewster that way, and got connected with David Wicks through a marathon paddle from Cincinnati to Louisville, straight through. And then on that particular paddle, the conversation got going. How can we link these two cities? What can we do? And that began this vision of creating some kind of guide to assist in that. And we as OKI had created something similar for Paddle Fest that allowed users while they're on the water to see exactly where they're at in the route and see points around them that are of interest. And so that was kind of the starting point of where we went from that. So we developed this digital guide. Now, when you go into the guide, you're going to see this disclaimer. You've got the legal language that's there. Of course, one of our participants on that paddle was a lawyer, and she made sure that we got to have that legal disclaimer on there. And you select which mode that you want to see. Based upon the mode you select, different points will pop up. Some of them, the points of interest on the map, are specific to cycling. Some of them are specific to boaters, and some of them work for both of them. And if you have your location services turned on, you'll get a little emblem, and it's going to center you where you are located or close to it. If you're on your desk, which is great if you're on your phone and you're out in the river, but if you are on your desktop, you'll probably want to turn that off so that you can explore. So you'll see the Cincinnati region. I'm going to back out so you can see the entire length of the trail here. And you see our bike routes are shown in green. The cycling along the river. And you'll also notice that we don't have a lot on the Kentucky side once you get to just across the river from Madison. But we do have through Indiana. That's maybe no surprise that where the roads connect. We have the most connectivity all along the river through there. So as you zoom in, you'll then start to see the different types of points that we have. These are our river communities. And so if you click on the river community, you'll see the pop-up. We've got a picture there, links to websites. And this is an area where we really are looking to those river communities. So the websites that you would like to have on the guide, if you have a better website that you would like, and we have the ability to have 2 websites listed within the digital guide. And that's where you can really keep stuff up to date. You'll see there's a number of points. We do have, some restaurants and things, but these are things that we're relying on folks who are local to add and keep current as we are doing this, because OKI staff, Louisville's outside of our region. I don't get paid to go to Louisville to explore and or Southern Indiana to explore and add these points in and keep them maintained. So we don't have that staff time and budget to be able to do that. So we really rely on the local communities to do that. And very much like the Lewis and Clark Trail, you see we've got a few more points listed along the Indiana or the Kentucky side. And so we're really looking for some help from you all who are within these communities to help in filling out the points that are within the trail. You notice we have a number of different types of points, and if you click on the layers over here, you'll see what those are. We have the river access, points of interest, campgrounds, restaurants, lodging, stores, marinas, river crossing, all the way down through there, historical sites. And I'm going to actually switch us so you can see the bike routes. You can turn the bike routes on and off, even if you're in as a boat user. And I'm going to switch our user, and so you can switch users by coming up here. I'm going to switch back to boat, partly because I really want to focus in on some of the key things. And this is, you think about an MPO who deals primarily with transportation pieces. Well, the river is a transportation corridor. We are focused on cycling within that. And the CEO of OKI was very keen on how can we help make this safer. So you'll see this purple line that's running along the river. This shows the designation of a marine highway. And that's the channel where you are most likely to encounter commercial traffic, but barges can go anywhere in the river that they want to go. And especially when you're near ports, they're going to be close to shore. And so what we were able to do is bring in the real-time AIS. This is automated identification system. And it shows the location of where barges and commercial traffic is on the river. So here we've got this. If you click on the right thing, let's zoom in. So if you click on that, it points in the direction that it's traveling. So this particular craft is moving at 2.7 knots. We don't have the name of it. And it's moving upriver. And so we can see that. But if we come in here, whoop, that circle, there we go. And it updates anywhere from 30 seconds to every 10, 15 minutes, but generally faster than that. So we've got the Gene Aiken. It's sitting still. So if it's below 0.5 knots, it's going to show up as a circle. But this helps users on the water. As a paddler, you know, I've paddled from Columbus to Louisville. I've paddled all those river miles within that. And on the Ohio River, it is really helpful to be able to see around those corners and know that there's a barge coming upriver, or to see behind you that there's a barge coming downriver. So that's a real key component that we're excited about on this particular digital guide. We also have wind direction. As you see the arrows, these are the airports around the region. So if there's an airport nearby, and that's for folks who've done paddling out on the river, that is real beneficial and helpful. So the ways that you can help us to keep this data current, there are two. So if you click on a point, you get that pop-up. If you see something that's in your community and you say, that's not right, that's incorrect, you can click on suggest and edit. And what that's going to do is pop up an email box, and that will send an email directly to me. The other way to do that is to go into the about. So if you see, hold on, I got to close this box. You want to suggest a new point. And if you click on that, that will take you to just a form that you fill out, the date, select what type of point it is that you want to add. We've got a map where you're just going to go in and you can zoom in and out and click and drop that point in, fill in the information, and depending upon the type of point. So if you selected an access point, there is a number of amenities that might be associated with that access point, and it's just a checkbox. So you just check them, add that in, addresses, identify the state it's in, if there's contact information for those, short description. If you have an image, that is really helpful to have that within the pop-up box and add that. And lastly, please give us your name so that we know who's doing that and who to reach out to if we need to get more information. Click submit. If you have multiple points, you can go back in and enter that again. The other way to do that, to add additional information, is on the Ohio River Recreation Trail website. You can suggest new guide points from there. There's a button, and that'll take you to that same form. link to the guide, as well as a short video that just kind of runs through the digital guide and can give you a quick tutorial on that. So I will put that link to that into the chat box for everyone. And
Thank you,
that's a
David.
digital guide.
Thank you. It's a very useful tool. We will be sending out information about it after this presentation as well. So a couple of tools there that are available to you to use to promote outdoor recreation and tourism along the Ohio. Now we're going to go into a SWOT analysis, and Russ Clark, my RTCA cohort in Kentucky, is going to lead us through this. Russ?
Thank you very much, Andrea. Welcome, everybody. As I bring up my PowerPoint, I would like to emphasize the fact that we're looking at Southern Indiana as a whole, not as individual communities. So we're thinking of a regional context here. And but we want you to tell us about your community. And as we have learned a few things along the way, and I'm going to set the context, we're going to want to make sure that you have signed in with your name and your email and address and affiliation, so that we have that information. It's very important for us to get back to you after this workshop is over, so we can continue to share information. But the context of the area is still the three cities of Southern Indiana: New Albany, Clarksville, Jeffersonville. What are the commonalities? And we've got some great insight coming up in the student reviews on that. Jim has shared a graphic with us that kind of gives the public ownership along the river, which is a very important component of this aspect. There are several city-owned and state-owned park areas, and there are several launches within the area, and there's a new launch on the Kentucky side that's coming in to be open here in the next couple of weeks down in Shawnee Park. So there are continuing efforts that are happening here to create access to the river. And as we've looked at this area, we've always looked at the walkability and the bikeability of the community. And this is through a website called walkscore.com. Typically, we find in most of our communities that we're pretty car dependent on walkability, and in the 0 to 24 range. And then we get into up to 49 on car dependent. And then in the bikeability scores too, we see a range here from 37 to 41. It's identified as somewhat bikeable, but there are some great assets in these communities with the greenway trail systems that are there. And it's just a matter of hopefully the communities can continue to expand that over time. That kind of gives us a context of what we're looking at here overall. With the SWOT analysis, we want to look at the strengths and the opportunities that are helpful for achieving the objective. And then we want to look at the weaknesses and threats that may be harmful or challenging aspects to meeting the objectives. And with this process, we are going to utilize a number of different techniques, but we are going to ask that you use the chat box. For each category, we will do all 4 categories independently. We will start out by typing in all caps the word for that category, such as strengths or opportunities, weaknesses, or threats. And then we would ask that you would enter one idea at a time, and as many ideas as you'd like. All ideas are good. We are looking to try and get your input as to what you feel the strengths are of your region, the opportunities, the weaknesses, and the threats. And as I indicated, we will do those one at a time. I will kind of look at that on a timing aspect. And when we stop on one, we will start the other, and then you will enter your thoughts and ideas regarding those specific categories. So we'll start out with strengths. So at this point, I would like to ask Helen Stevers, our assistant with RTCA here in Kentucky, to type that into the chat box for us. And at this point, please begin to identify what you feel are the strengths of your region. And there are a number of different ideas that can come from that. Again, all ideas are good, but it's a matter of what are some of the things that the communities can build on that they already have? Things that the community does well in the region. What are your unique resources? Those are very important to identify as strengths. And as you continue to move forward, what are some of the qualities that separate your region from other regions? That's important to note for strengths. And there are internal resources that you may have in the area that are unique that you could capitalize on. That's important to bring forth. The aspect of tangible assets. And then one of the other key aspects that I always ask my participants, what do others see as your community strengths, in your opinion? What brings your folks to your area? What makes you unique? What makes your community or your region special? And this is not just related to the river, but it's also related to your greater area. So we are looking at the Ohio River as a corridor. We are looking at land-based recreation as well as water-based recreation. But we are looking for the strengths of your region.
I think it's also really great that we have so many participants, because we can get many different perspectives on what those strengths are. Whether you're a student who participated in the Rivertown reviews, or you are a person that's involved in the community, or you're just somebody who is from the outside looking in, that we get a variety of opinions about what those strengths are. So you should be entering those into the chat right now so that we can accumulate them.
And again, all ideas are good ideas. This just helps us look at the context of your area, what's important in your eyes for the strengths of your region. And I see a few coming into chat. That's great. We'll go a couple more minutes and we'll move on to the next one.
The other piece that I think Russ may have mentioned is that after the students talk, we're going to be prioritizing what these strengths are.
That's
So,
right.
Getting
Yes.
a variety of things, and then we'll be able to, as a group, determine what those priorities are, what are the most important strengths.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. It's important for us to come back to this with the list that Helen is putting together as we go on to other presentations. And we'll ask that each of the participants enter into a poll and select what they feel are the top 3 choices for each of these 4 categories that should be addressed. And that will be part of an interactive component of this workshop. And we'll do that before we enter into a brainstorming session. I'm really glad to see all the input coming in. Any last thoughts for strengths for the area? One idea at a time if you can. We're trying to consolidate this information. When we consolidate it, we will be probably doing a little combination of thoughts and ideas. We are limited to about 10 items on a poll per category here. So Helen will have the task of trying to consolidate some of these thoughts into 10 components, and then we will select from those 10 components.
I should say y'all are doing great. We're up to 25, which I've got to somehow consolidate to 10 for
Okay.
our polling purposes. But that tells us we're getting some varied and quality feedback here. So well done.
Yes, great. That is great. And all this information will be useful for us and very helpful for us to help understand the context of your community. Okay, so we're going to come into an end here on strengths. Everyone's done an excellent job. Let's close strengths out. And now what are some of the opportunities that are there for our area, for the Southern Indiana 3 communities. And these are of external origin. What are some of those ideas that really could help move forward the aspect of our community? So when we look at strengths, and so we looked at strengths, now we're looking at, I said opportunities. So, okay, I jumped to the wrong one actually. So if we've started with opportunities, we'll go with opportunities. That's fine. My mistake. So look, opportunities, that's an external component, but it's similar to strengths. And you may have some of the same ideas in both, and that's fine. But opportunities, we look at things to explore. We look at underserved markets. We look at the emerging need in the community and in the region. What are some of those real needs to help set yourself apart? What trends could you take advantage of that you're aware of that aren't being taken advantage of in this region? And what don't we have that could make our community better? Those are some thoughts to think about with opportunities. And how can you turn your strengths into opportunities? Strengths and opportunities tie together very well, but these are the external factors. We've got some great ideas coming in. Again, it's, what don't we have that we could have or should have to make our community better? What are some underserved markets? Things that should be explored. That's the big one. Well, a couple more minutes on this. We've got some great ideas coming in. Whitewater kayaking seems to be coming up. That's an interesting one. Utilize the islands. Historic tourism, quality of life. Again, just a reminder to try and do one idea per entry. So we're not necessarily looking for volume, but we're looking to try and separate these ideas and group them in the end so that we can try and get a good cross section here for our 10 categories or 10 opportunities under each of the categories. I really appreciate all the input. Things to explore. Any last thoughts here? We're going to go another minute or so and move back on to another category. Ellen, what kind of a numbers are you getting in this category?
Don't know yet.
Oh, okay. All right. That's fine. Share when you can. That's fine.
Are we ready to move on to weaknesses?
Yes. Yeah. Let's close out the opportunities and go to the harmful category. So what are the weaknesses of internal to the region? And weaknesses are often things to overcome. What could we do to improve in our region? Things the community lacks. What's not there that should be there? Things your competitors do better than you do. That's something that to think about. And then where do you have fewer resources than others? And then what are others likely to see as your weaknesses? Those are kind of the categories that we're looking for. Things to overcome. What could you improve? Things the community lacks. What your competitors or other regions do better than you. Those are all items that could fit under weaknesses that fit that challenge. Yeah, competitive communities competing. That's a good one. Yes. Funding always seems to come up. Some excellent recommendations coming in here under weaknesses. I'm going to close out here shortly. Please enter your last thoughts. Okay, well, at this point, let's close out weaknesses and we'll go into threats. And threats are things to minimize. Emerging competitors in the region. What threats could harm you as a tourism destination? What threats do your weaknesses expose you to? Again, some ideas can tie over from one to another. And are there any changing regulatory aspects that are going to provide threats to your objectives here? Those are just some general considerations, but it's things that you are going to need to overcome overall. And there are going to be challenges for moving forward with this vision for your region. There's some great thoughts coming in. Lack of political cohesion, that's a good one. Urban sprawl. Private ownership of a riverfront. Uncooperative land abusers, that's an interesting one. Flooding, yeah, yes, definitely. Look to a balance. Climate change. Any last thoughts here for threats? Let's roll them in, please. Economic uncertainty. Nature deficit disorder. Okay, I think we're coming to a close on threats, Helen. Please enter those last ones in, and we'll let Helen begin her effort to consolidate this information. What I want to next turn the presentation back over to David for the desktop review summaries with the students and the visitor assessment summaries. These in-depth analyses are great tools to use to help further identify what your community looks like from a fresh set of eyes. And copies of all these summaries will be provided by the community. And David, I'm turning it over to you now. Thank you.
If you could de-share your screen, that'd be great there, Russ.
I have right now. Thank you.
Well, why, thank you very much for this participation. You know, it's quite exciting to see these ideas and how common or similar they are to many of the student ideas that they came up with. We have 3 presentations. Our students were broken into 3 separate groups. I have 2 of their PowerPoints on my screen here, and we're going to have New Albany first. And so if our New Albany crew could unmute themselves and turn their screens or their video on. I'll share their PowerPoint here, and I'm going to control it. And if people could start off with introducing themselves, and then we'll go to the video here. So Julia, Zach, Vin, Mohammed, you're on.
Hi, I'm Julia,
I'm Mohammed.
senior geography major. Sorry.
Sorry. So I'm Mohammed, a senior biology major.
And I'm Zach, a senior biology major.
I'm Vin, and I'm a sophomore accounting major.
Who's on?
Okay, so I'm having a little bit of trouble with my internet, but I'm going to go ahead and start. So we were working with New Albany, and I'm going to start with a very brief history of the city. So it was founded in 1813 as an economic center with factories that made steamboats, glass, and furniture. And these industries actually made it the largest city in Indiana up until 1860, which is something I found really interesting. After the Civil War, boycotts from the war and the new railroad bridge and glass factories led to changes, so increases and decreases in the economy. And of course, as you guys know, there was a devastating flood in 1937 that, ruined parts of the cities, as you can see in the images on the left.
Hello, everyone. So as part of the Rivertown review, our first order of business was to conduct a desktop review. So before we even step foot on the city, on the town, we first had to look online to see what opportunities we could find, what are some places we can go. So kind of like an initial review. So some of the things we focused on was tourism. We found out that it was already known that New Albany was part of the Clark-Floyd County Convention Tourism Bureau, which is also known as SoIN. We identified some of the lodgings of the area, including like a Holiday Inn Express, Hampton Inn, Fairfield Inn, and the Peppermint Mansion B&B, which we know there was like a good number of chains, but we could not find any other independent hotel other than the B&B. And some of the attractions that we found through this review included the Culbertson Mansion. One of the most famous ones is the Town Clock Church, which was a center for the Underground Railroad along the river. The Carnegie Center for Art and History, the Scribner House, the Pageant Museum, and Market Street, which was recently renovated as of last year in the summer. So here's some of the pictures I took in conjunction. Oh, okay. And some of the other things that we focused on was outdoor recreation opportunities. So there was like 4 different categories where there was cycling, hiking, walking, and paddling. So some of the cycling opportunities include the Greenway, the Ohio River Greenway, and downtown New Albany. Hiking included the Loop Island wetlands. Walking was also the Greenway, the downtown New Albany area, and the Sam Pettit Community Park. And for paddling, it was the Ohio River and Silver Creek.
So my main job during our review was to visit Silver Creek and assess what it looks like currently. So currently Silver Creek is hard to access for paddling, especially for those with physical disabilities and ailments. You'll see the slope. You actually have to get down to access Silver Creek on the next slide. Paddling downstream of Silver Creek is currently blocked or really difficult due to the Lowhead Dam. It makes the water really shallow, so you'd have to drag your kayak or canoe a pretty decent ways to actually find deep enough water. On the next slide, you also see some current pollution or dumping of trash. However, it did have several visitors, both fishermen and hikers, upon our visits, so it would be a great opportunity to develop for outdoor recreation. And here on the left, you see that difficult slope. You actually have to walk around this little fence and down this steep embankment, and then here's the littering on the right side.
I'm going to talk about some of the current development plans that the city of New Albany and the county have in place. So the city of New Albany is dedicating $215,000 to improving parks facilities in low-income census tracts, and they also have a program called the NA Parks or New Albany Parks Youth Enrichment Program, which intends to improve social skills and behavior through field trips and recreational and educational opportunities. And they're also working on Silver Creek, which Zach was talking about in the previous few slides. And then Floyd County is implementing improvements to Stampede and Community Park, including expansion of the walking trail, a tree planting program, movement of a special needs facility, and goose population control. I'm also going to talk about some of the potential improvements that we saw when on our visits. So we talked about working with hospitality industry to ensure that all employees know about the outdoor recreation opportunities in New Albany, specifically because someone in our group visited a hotel and asked what they could do in New Albany, what are some of the attractions, and the workers didn't know. They didn't know what to say. So educating them to talk about outdoor recreation opportunities, also continuing the Ohio River Greenway past 10th Street, eventually linking it up with the power plant's natural area, working with Origin Park to maximize recreational access along Silver Creek, continue exploring a walking bridge to Kentucky using the K&I Railroad Bridge, and improvements of current walking and hiking trails, including Stampede and Community Park, which is already being worked on, and then Loop Island's Wetlands Trail, which I visited. I visited Loop Island. The main thing that I saw there was that the middle of the trail was really overgrown and it wasn't very clear which way the trail was going. And there were lots of little trails that people had created just to get around, find their way basically. So, but overall, our visits were really nice. New Albany is a nice town.
All right, thank you very much, New Albany folks. You know, they also did what we call a classic day trip video. And so as Julia mentioned, she focused on the Loop Island Trail, and we'll post those in the chat and we'll follow up with everybody else as we go on down the line here. Let me call on Jeffersonville folks, and we'll see if we can get their logo here. And while we're waiting, maybe you guys could log on, take care of unmuting yourself and putting your video on. And you're on, Jeffersonville folks, Luke, Colin, Luke, and Sean.
All right, so this is the group of Luke McFarland, Colin Nowd, Luke Schroeder, and Sean Woods. And today we're going to talk about the Rivertown of Jeffersonville, Indiana, specifically the online components that we found, as well as our in-person site visits. Next slide. So a little bit about the strengths of the city. We want to talk about both the online and the in-person parts. Jeffersonville's history is very rich as it goes back hundreds of years. It's thought to have been founded by our third president, Thomas Jefferson. And it's also evident that American history is really making a difference for this city. Two specific components include the Underground Railroad, as well as the steamboat industry, as illustrated with the Howard Steamboat Museum pictured below. The city also has a deep connection to the river itself and focuses a lot on outdoor recreation. It's evident here by the Ohio River, specifically the Ohio River Greenway, as well as the Big Four Bridge that are both pictured below. Next slide.
After completing our desktop review and getting a general idea of the town, the J team was ready to make our visits. Some comments we made about, that had kind of a focus on the bridge and downtown area as a whole. The primary riverside tourism for folks revolves around the Big Four Bridge and the river east of the bridge. Sightseeing, restaurants, and boating were the largest focal points for riverside activities that we saw. Some observations of the locations closest to the Big Four Bridge. Fisherman's Wharf consists of a welcoming dock area with benches and a long walk, which stood out as a primary area for people to go along the river in Jeffersonville. Large spans of land east of Fisherman's Wharf was blocked off to the public. This area, you might know, is an old shipyard known to the public as Jeff Boat. Lastly, some comments with the focus of talking to residents of Jeffersonville. We visited the Howard Steamboat Museum. Katie Engstrom, our tour guide, gave her opinion of Jeff Boat in particular as a great area for future park-related recreational activities. Visitors of Jeffersonville were asked for their opinions as well. They gave a great focus on the atmosphere around the river and the value it had for dates, visits for quiet walks, and local bars and restaurants. Next slide.
Hello?
Sorry, I was muted. So here we have multiple cyclists in the city, and we wanted to focus a little bit on the cyclists during one of our trips. As you can see in these photos, we have 2 going down the street and 2 pretty much going the opposite way by sidewalk. We think the city overall does a pretty good job. You can see in the 3rd photo that there are kind of cycling directions, but we think it could be a little bit cleaner maybe. Next slide. And here's some of the signs we noticed in the town. So kind of closer to the river, we had a lot of effective signage, and the deeper you went in, it seemed like maybe a little bit older signs. In the bottom left there, what I think is a very effective sign right by the river that designates kind of where stuff is. Whereas in the bottom right there, we have what is kind of difficult to make out is the sign, or one of the signs for Water Park. And it is completely photo bleached, and I tried to get it in the angle, but it's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, next slide.
Okay, so we have a few key recommendations for the city of Jeffersonville based on our observations. For one, we'd love to see an expanded pedestrian and bike access to the greenway space along the river, and as well as to the historic downtown areas. We'd like to see some updated signs like we just mentioned as well. We'd like to see, saw some articles about experimentation with pedestrian only downtown streets. We think this is going to be huge for the walkability of the city and that overall like small town Americana vibe. We also would like to see as a whole for Southern Indiana, more collaboration on hiking and biking trails. And then next slide, please. And then the big toss up, of course, is Jeff Boat. We would love to see Jeff Boat converted into a public park space that prioritizes public access for the entire community of all ages, from small families up until the elderly as well. We'd also love to see some sustainability measures and considerations for flooding as the river continues to rise. And we think that the park should highlight some of the rich history of Jeffersonville, including the steamboat industry. We'd love to see the Howard Steamboat get involved with possibly docking some historic ships, as well as some public art projects relating to steamboats as well.
All right, many thanks, folks there from Jeffersonville. And our last crew here is from Clarksville. And so it looks like you have it started. Katie Forrest.
Okay, so my name is Stevie, and we also in this group we have Katie and Forrest and Lexi, and we're going to be talking about Clarksville. You go to the next page. So I just want to give a little brief historical context. There's a rich native history to the area because the Falls of the Ohio allowed for a lot of bison and other animals to cross over, so it made it a very rich, diverse area for people to live for a very long time. But eventually the area was settled in 1783 by George Rogers Clark, and which was named after him. And after multiple jails were built in the area and some railroads and bridges were built into Louisville, there was a population boom. And ultimately, over time, this led to the current 21,000 residents that live there.
Okay, the experience in Clarksville, like Stevie said, is focused around its rich history and its also natural beauty. And as you can see in this picture, we visited the fossil beds as one of our site visits. And we found as we were hiking along that there aren't a lot of clear paths specifically. And we actually happened to run into a family that was also confused from the signage. But overall, our experience along the Ohio River and visiting the fossil beds was beautiful. It was focused mainly along the scenic views. We also had a trip through this class, and we took a bike ride from Louisville's Community Boathouse, and we crossed the Ohio River over the Big Four Bridge, and we rode through Jeffersonville. So we got to see the commercialized restaurants and all the different shops along the river, many parking lots, and you could tell that it was the center of Jeffersonville right there on the river. But as you're going along the Ohio River Greenway, we kind of felt like we were going back into time. It was more focused on this park-like setting, and you're pretty much just surrounded by nature at that point in Clarksville. Next slide.
Clarksville has great opportunities to access the river, but it was kind of difficult to find out about them online. The Ohio River Greenway provides plenty of parking lots and access to bathrooms. From there, there's the George Rogers Clark boat ramp, trails, and other means to access the river. Pertaining to bicycle opportunities, there are bike racks along the Greenway, and you can rent bicycles at Widow's Walk once the pandemic is over. The trails could possibly benefit from more rental options like Louvalu and Louisville, which is affordable and easily accessible. And then I'll talk about walkability on the next slide. Although Clarksville has a walk score of 30, if you switch the location to Ashland Park, the score increases to 33 with a bike score of 58. This is most likely due to the Greenway, as there's not a lot of bike lanes in Clarksville.
All right, and so one of the biggest future plans for Clarksville is the creation of Origin Park. This park is planned to be amphibian, meaning it will be built to accommodate flooding and can be used during floods. And this will be accomplished by the elevated trail called the Infinity Loop, which will be 2.8 miles long and can be used in any weather. It's also intended to have a virtual tour associated with it that will detail the history of the area, which you'd be able to access by your phone instead of just like a bunch of different signs in the park.
Okay, so one of the areas for improvement that we saw for Clarksville was with engagement online. Clarksville has an online presence and social media presence, but it could be better. For instance, on Facebook and Twitter, their strongest social media, there's a lot of announcements, sometimes posts like news articles, sometimes just updates on like what's happening in the government and specific meetings. And while that should be online, that go better on the website. What we need on Facebook and Twitter is stuff that actually engages with people and actually creates impressions organically, whether that be elevating the presence of local businesses or talking with people in the community and elevating their voices. Clarksville needs an Instagram. Right now, there is a profane parody account of the town of Clarksville, and they just need to get something on there that'll replace that presence. A TikTok or Snapchat might not hurt later on down the road either, but those are the three important ones. On their website, it's beautiful, but the section on exploring Clarksville isn't as intuitive as it could. It's a little slideshow thing that doesn't work, doesn't show you all the resources at once. And when you click on those options, it actually takes you to other websites for like other tourism bureaus and stuff like that, where really, once you do that, that takes people off the website, and we don't really want to do that. Having it as a native present on the website for all the opportunities in Clarksville would be a bit better.
Yeah, okay, so we made a list of recommendations, short-term and long-term, and like Forrest said, online presence and marketing is one of the biggest ones here. I know when we were doing our desktop review, I would Google Clarksville, Indiana, and the first thing that would pop up is Clarksville, Tennessee, even though I specifically put Indiana. So just the fact that it's so hard to find information really, I feel like affects the tourism there and also affects people's knowledge of what Clarksville has to offer. Also, for our short term, we have park upkeep. So during some of our visits, we talked to some locals there at the parks, and some of their concerns were the bathrooms. A lot of bathrooms are locked right now because of COVID-19, which is understandable, but it causes some burden on families with small children that want to visit the parks. And for long term, we want to build on the experience. So we noticed that there's not a lot of places where you can rent bikes or kayaks or boats along the Ohio River Greenway, which for Clarksville's tourism and outdoor recreation, this is like the heart of the city right there, right around the waterfront. And it would be really awesome if they could provide easier access for families that are just looking for a day trip, because a lot of times families will show up and not really know how to use these facilities. And I think it would be a really great way to just improve the overall experience. Also, increase inclusivity. When we were hiking on these trails, it was kind of how Julia said in New Albany. A lot of these trails are off-beaten paths that people just kind of create on their own to access the waterfront, to get closer to the fossil beds. There weren't many signs saying how long it was or how rigorous the trail was. And a lot of people were just following these trails. We just follow each other to basically figure out where to go. So the signage could definitely be improved and also allow access to these trails for people who aren't able-bodied.
Okay, so we're really hopeful for Clarksville's future. It's really well positioned for the future, and we believe that it can continue to become the community that reaches people's full potential, particularly with the creation of Origin Park. We believe that'll bring in more people and just continue to support the growth of a walkable, bikeable community that hopefully will grow more local businesses to just help that character even more. So thank you.
Yep. And also, I just want to give a special thanks to Al Gorman. I know you guys were commenting in the chat, but he was super amazing. He's helped us a lot. I know I went and picked up some of his art. We're including it in our exhibit, and he gave me a tour of the Carnegie Center. He's been amazing. We met him spontaneously on the waterfront on one of our site visits, and we came across a lot of his art, and it's wonderful. If you guys have a chance to check it out, I think that that could also be a point of tourism interest, just the art opportunities and inspiration along the river.
Well, why, thank you very much for all three teams. And if you could share your screen there, that would be great. We've had a great semester investigating it. You know, we have two more pieces to ours. The students, along with a variety of artists, are working with the Louisville Free Public Library and are creating a exhibit that will be at the library. It is at the library right now, but unfortunately COVID is closed it. But we made a video. Forrest, who was in the last group, is the narrator of it. And so I'd like to share this short video. One of the pieces is, the interesting thing is that it really features river towns along the Ohio River with a focus on Clarksville, Jeffersonville, and New Albany. And how can we promote tourism, local tourism? Somebody's, hey Russ, why don't you mute yourself? There you go. Okay, so I'm gonna share this video. And
welcome to the Bernheim Gallery at the Louisville Free Public Library. I invite you on a journey with me for a few minutes down the Ohio River as we explore the exhibit River of Life, Cities and Towns Along the Mighty Ohio, presented in partnership with our U of L Honors Seminar, Louisville Free Public Library, Afloat, an Ohio River Way of Life, Ohio River Recreation Trail, the National Park Service's Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, and the Ohio River Basin Alliance. For all its glory, modern people still take the Ohio River for granted. Its place in American history often ignored, its value in our lives and recreation industries impossible to calculate. Taken as a whole, the Ohio River is 961 miles long, with a drainage basin of 204,000 square miles that borders 6 states: Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, with tributaries that drain from parts of New York, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. The current location of the Ohio River resulted from the last ice age. Native Americans lived along the Ohio River for about 15,000 years. Then the British and the French claimed rights to the land, that resulting in extensive conflicts. In 1749, the Ohio Company was chartered with settlements, and then the Revolutionary War followed. The river became a border during the Civil War later on, serving as a water line between the free and slave states. By 1860, Louisville had become the largest city along the Ohio River for slave trafficking, as well as a center for the Underground Railroad, moving slaves to freedom across the river to Indiana. Today, the Ohio River is home to 21 locks and dams, down from 51 wooden wicket dams and locks. The river's only natural barrier is the Falls of the Ohio. Today, more than 25 million people live in the Ohio River Basin. While some argument remains over who was the first European to explore the Ohio River, with the Native Americans being thousands of years ahead of either French explorer René Robert Cavelier or Dutch explorer and interpreter Arnaud Viel, the one certainty is the Ohio River Recreational Trail has made the modern trip a whole lot easier and more entertaining. The trail and accompanying digital guide encompasses hundreds of points of interest, amenities, and historical sites along 274 miles of the Ohio River from Portsmouth, Ohio to West Point, Kentucky. It lists river access points, campgrounds, marinas, river crossings, restaurants, and stores. It's all about connecting you with your roots to the Ohio River, a personal voyage of discovery. The exhibit features modern photos of towns and cities along the trail by photographers Joe Wallach and John Nation, as well as aquatic wildlife photos by Pam Spalding. In addition, there are more than 50 historic photos of life along the Ohio taken by historian and author Reuben Gold Thwaites. In 1894, Thwaites, along with his wife, 10-year-old son, and brother-in-law, traveled down the Monongahela River in the full length of the Ohio River from Pittsburgh to Cairo, Illinois, in a 15-foot rowboat named Pilgrim. The trip took 6 weeks, and Thwaites documented the trip through photos with his No. 2 Kodak camera and wrote about it for the Wisconsin State Journal. Through these photos, you can follow along with the Thwaites as their rowboat floats south with the Ohio. His wife Jessie rowing on the Monongahela, an Indian mound in West Virginia, children at a quiff dwelling in Ohio, a general store in Rabbit Hash, Kentucky, still around today, the Louisville Wharf, and beyond. The University of Louisville's Honors 2020 seminar on the Ohio River was one of the driving forces behind the creation of this exhibit. As a participant in that class, our goal with this project was to advocate for the future of our communities and the environment on the Ohio. The seminar used an interdisciplinary approach to understand how recreation and conservation can support river towns along the Ohio. Through working with the National Park Service's Rivertown Review Program, hearing from community stakeholders, and experiencing these places ourselves, often by paddling, we investigated the oft-overlooked potential of the Ohio and its communities. In addition to learning about the Ohio today, the seminar focused on how the river has sustained generations of people before us. Using this historical context, our advocacy builds on the lifetimes of work by numerous individuals and organizations that have cared and do care for the river. As a citizen of the Ohio River Basin, you're a part of that story too. It's up to each of us to help build a better future for our river and our communities. This part of the exhibit shares some of our research. The photos and videos are snapshots of our time in New Albany, Clarksville, and Jeffersonville, Indiana. Thank you for joining us on our virtual tour of River of Life, cities and towns along the mighty Ohio. And I hope you're able to experience adventures of your own in river towns like these.
You know, what's exciting to me is the not only that initial preview, but the exhibit itself. The Louisville Free Public Library is closed, unfortunately, right now. But when it opens, the exhibit will be up for at least another 2.5 months. And so we hope that over the next 6 months, it will be featured and it will increase the number of people in Louisville, at least visiting Clarksville, New Albany, and Jeffersonville, while at the same time really thinking about how we can work together more. The project was a great summation of our class, and I look forward to having a time when the opening of the official piece, hopefully soon, and we can invite all the students back. We want to use our final minutes here to introduce Russ Barnett, who was my co-instructor in the class, and he has some final observations from the class about our 3 river towns and the Ohio River. Russ? You're on mute, Russ. Russ, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks, David. I'm glad you've given me 3 minutes to explain, summarize what we've learned over 15 weeks. But part of what we did in this class was we hope to get an better understanding of the economic value of outdoor recreation. It's a $12 billion industry in Indiana. It generates over 200,000 jobs. Most important is that communities that are going to grow economically in the future and will need to be improving their quality of life in their communities. And outdoor recreation is a big component of that. over the last 9 months, and probably for the next 24 months, the pandemic has demonstrated that jobs are no longer tied to a workplace. I work at the University of Louisville. We've not been, the University of Louisville has not had staff or faculty or students at the university since March 13th. And it's very unlikely that we will return anytime soon. So it's important that if we're going to try to grow communities, that part of that is going to be to grow outdoor recreation. But outdoor recreation is not just an economic issue. It also improves public health, the quality of life, transportation options. There's a lot of benefits of investing more in our outdoor recreation. And funding for those can come from any number of different financial means. It includes public-private collaborations, such as we've done here in Louisville with the Parklands of Floyd's Fork, which has had $120 million in construction parks. That's what you're doing in Clarksville and Origin Park. But we can also use things such as creative incremental financing, or TIF. This is how the University of Louisville, for example, funded its expansion of its health science campus. It's based on designating an area around a proposed public project, issue a bond payable by the increase in tax revenue from the base area over a 25 to 30-year period. That increase comes as we invest in outdoor recreation to adjacent properties. We've seen that in cities across the United States. The thing that the students quickly identified is that it's greenways, trails, and bike paths that really link a community. 2/3 of all trips are less than 5 miles. And one of the things that we've seen during the pandemic is that they provide a very important transportation, alternative transportation mode. So visit any place that you could normally buy a bike, and you'll find right now that they're not really available. At a regional level, the Ohio River Greenway provides a very important backbone for connecting the cities, and a lot of what the students you've heard in their recommendations was to identify other hiking, biking paths to link to that backbone. The fact that we are even trying to protect natural areas, what we've shown through research, that the exposure to nature will reduce stress, reduce aggression and crime, promotes healing. If you've been to any hospital, you'll always notice that the pictures in the hospital are always natural scenes. And what they've are there for is mostly to promote healing. It promotes reflection and innovation. It strengthens relationships. It reduces attention deficit and depression. All of those things are important. We do not understand the reason that happens, but the research has shown that it does happen. At the same time, providing outdoor recreation addresses Indiana's obesity epidemic. 34% of Hoosiers are obese. It's the 15th highest in the US. Kentucky's even worse. We're 4th in the US. And yet we are paying in Indiana, you're paying $3.5 billion in obesity related medical costs. One of the things that the students identified, and something that caught both Dr. Wicks and I a little bit by surprise, is that student perception of Southern Indiana was almost blank. Even those students in our class that grew up in Louisville said they'd never really been across the river. They had really no knowledge of any of its attractions. And as you heard, the responses students received to that from hotel and restaurant workers. So the question of what is there to do here was pretty dismal. And so this is a point that I think should be addressed directly by Southern Indiana Tourism, of doing training on an annual basis and make it available to workers in that recreational community. Then we also have we need to be working on inter-community infrastructure projects to link those trails. And so the Origin Park, even though it has a great deal of promise, there's not any kind of link to it from the city of Clarksville. And that's something that should be worked on. I always get at the university people that the faculty and staff, the gym that we can exercise is about a mile from campus. And I'm always surprised that people would get in their cars and drive a mile to go exercise. Kind of the same thing if it's ridiculous to put your bike on a car so you could go bicycling in Clarksville.
Russ, you have about 15 seconds left.
All right, so the three areas properties that I think the students have identified where we need to do some both short and long-term focus is the 65-acre Jeff Boat property. We've heard a lot of range of proposed uses. We've heard a lot of confusion over exactly what's going to happen there. If we had a vision, we could make it happen. The 400-acre floodplain in Clarksville, the park is proposed, Origin Park is proposed there. Can there be a park when we still have inroads of residential and commercial uses? And in New Albany, it's the 30-acre QRS recycling facility. This is already publicly owned, but we still don't really have a clear or visible plan. So it's those three properties that could be the backbone of outdoor recreation in the area. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Russ. We'd like to turn it back over to our NPS folks, and Russ and Andrea and Helen. We're ready for the poll.
Actually, we're going to take a few more minutes, right, Helen, to get that together. There were so many great responses, and we're trying to fit that into the poll. So I'm going to go right into the brainstorming session.
And I'll be ready soon after. Thank you.
Okay, and we will push the poll till the end. So normally in a meeting, we would have done this with flip charts and post-it notes, and there would have been a lot of communication in between. But we're going to do some brainstorming now about what the communities can do to enhance outdoor recreation opportunities and to promote tourism related to the Ohio River. So think of this in terms of all three of the communities and try to focus on the outdoor recreation opportunities and promote tourism related to the Ohio River. Now we're going to do this a little bit differently. You're going to use the chat feature and you're going to put in your ideas. And you can list your ideas as a group or individually as they come to you. And you can start typing them in now, but I'm asking you to not hit enter. So we want to give you some time to think about what you're putting in and not trying to respond to what everyone else is putting in. So go ahead and put your ideas in there. It's the three communities and outdoor recreation and the river. Think of it in terms of this. If you could ask a genie to solve a problem related to outdoor recreation and tourism in your community, what would you ask that genie to do? And what ideas from everything that you've heard, we've heard a lot of information today from the tools, from the students, from our SWOT analysis.
Andrea, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're very garbled. And so I'm not sure if Russ could take over because it's just hard to hear, or is it just ready to type in?
Let me, is that any better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so you should be putting your answers into the chat. And in a few moments, we're going to hit enter and those will start to populate. You can also enter things after we do that. This is just to give you an opportunity to put some thought into what you're typing and not have it be based on what everyone else is inputting. And as I was saying, I don't know if you could hear me, but we've heard a lot from the students, from the tools that are available, from our SWOT analysis. And so now we're trying to put our ideas for what we can do to engage your town, maybe with the Ohio River, with the ORRT, some trip opportunities. Think in terms of long-term and short-term brainstorming ideas. And how can the Ohio River Recreation Trail be beneficial to your ideas? All ideas are good ideas. Wild and ambitious ideas are great. You're encouraged to build on other ideas as well. So we're going to have you hit enter now, and we should see some of those start to populate. And of course, some of these will be similar to what we came up with during opportunities and strengths, but these are ideas for SoIN for the 3 communities based on outdoor recreation and tourism. There's your prompt. And we'll be reading through some, this is great. So we will be taking these answers and we will be putting them into a form that we will be sending out to all the participants that we can then help to rank and prioritize these ideas to give you some, it's another tool in our assessment of the Rivertown Review that can help the communities to help themselves. Okay, these are good. So we still have 43 participants who are hanging in there with us, and we would appreciate any of your brainstorming ideas. You can keep entering those. University of Louisville to make that connection. Also Duke Energy. So there's some corporate opportunities there. Wildlife areas. This is great. Different programming ideas and right, reconnecting communities, trails, parks. These are good. So keep entering these. And like I said, we're going to compile this list generated from this session, and we will be asking you to choose your top 3, short-term and long-term. We'll divide them up into short-term and long-term brainstorming ideas, and that will be part of your homework. Are we getting close to being ready for the poll? Okay, so you can keep entering your brainstorming ideas. This is great. Thank you so much. I'm seeing some things here that certainly I have not thought about. So it's good to have that local perspective and a broad perspective from the number of participants that we have here today. So I'm going to kick it back to Helen and Russ to do a polling exercise based on the SWOT analysis that so we can prioritize what those, all of those many answers. Trust me, there were a lot of answers that we've been scrambling, trying to put them into categories so that they would fit into the poll. So Helen and Russ.
Thank you, Andrea. I brought up on the screen, excuse me, the Zoom instructions for the SWOT poll. Helen's going to bring up the actual questions here in a moment, but I wanted to take a few minutes here to kind of give you an overview of how we need to do this. For each of the 4 categories that we identified for the SWOT analysis, the strength, opportunities, weakness, and threats, you can select 1 to 3 of those categories and choices as your priorities. You have to at least respond to 1 in each of those 4 categories. But after responding to those 4 questions, scroll down to the very bottom of the screen and you will see a submit button. That will provide the opportunity for your choices to be collected into the poll, and that will be the primary aspect of us being able to see the result. So I'm going to turn it over to Helen now. Helen? I will
Yeah,
stop
I'm
sharing
going to
my
launch
screen.
the poll, so it should come up on your screen now.
And again, be sure to scroll down. You can't submit. The submit button isn't active until you choose something from each category.
As Andrea said, we did our best to consolidate entries under certain headings. We got it. Y'all were very responsive. Very well done.
And the advantage of this particular one that we'll be able to show real-time results as soon as you are done entering your choices.
Yeah, we received a total of 150 entries from folks on this meeting today, which we've tried to consolidate into 10 choices each among these 4 headings that we hope represent all the ideas that you brought to the table. If not, feel free to reinforce your observations in the chat box, because we'll also, that'll be a record of this meeting as well.
Helen, just to let you know, question number 3, you can only choose 1 topic.
Oh, nuts.
Same with 4.
So that's, and question 4. So only vote for 1, and we can't change the poll as we are going forward. So
Yeah, shoot.
Just vote for the top 1.
User error on my part. Sorry about that.
That's okay, Helen. I'm sure we'll still get 3 top ones.
Yes.
It's hard to choose because all of them are important. That's why you suggested them.
Right.
One of the important aspects of doing this type of polling and asking for your opinion on the priorities is we begin to see trends and opportunities that can kind of lead to some short-term or long-term tasks for the region to look at. So this all falls into our final report in a very positive way. And thank you for your time to do this.
It looks as though folks have finished. Do we think it's time to end the polling? It's been 3 minutes.
Sounds good.
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, here we go. And now I'm going to share the results. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
So Russ, you want to talk about these a little bit?
Russ, do you have any observations?
To me, it looked like the strength was pretty strong with just the Ohio River aspect itself tied into access. From the opportunities, Jeff Boat redevelopment is a huge opportunity.
Helen, can you explain why one line is red?
I think that's the top vote getter in under each category.
Okay. So ideally, if we had done this prior to the brainstorming, it could have helped to guide more of your thinking, but we just couldn't make that happen. But this is still very valuable information going forward.
Andrea, your voice is still garbled.
Any better?
No.
Okay.
Well, Andrea is trying to work out her technical challenges here. I just want to reinforce what Andrea indicated is this typically we try and do before we do the brainstorming. And we still want to, if there's an opportunity for you to rethink or add to your brainstorming list as a result of this poll, please do. Again, we want to try and collect as much information as we can on your ideas for the region related to short-term and long-term opportunities. And then we will be seeking an opportunity for you to evaluate that through some homework that we will go over here shortly once we close the brainstorming session. So Andrea, are you back up?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but you're still garbled. So.
Oh, okay, I'm going to go on mute.
Okay.
Continue on.
Okay, great. Well, I haven't seen the poll here, or I'm sorry, the chat here for a while. Are there more opportunity or more thoughts people are bringing in relative to brainstorming ideas that should be considered for the region that are either short-term or long-term that may tie into the SWOT analysis and the polling that we just completed? Please take a minute to do that. I'm going to share my screen again to go over some more details and kind of start wrapping up some thoughts here so that we can get into our final discussion and move forward with our workshop here. So some of the next steps that we're going to be looking at here is we're going to be sending you an email with some actual handout. That email will have a form on it that identifies the brainstorming thoughts that you have populated in the chat box. And we will ask you to evaluate those that listing and fill out a form that identifies short-term and long-term priorities based on your review of all the ideas that have been generated. We will also provide you with a copy of the poll for the SWOT analysis, and that will, we're going to try and get out to you December 2nd so that you will have that information to review, and then we will ask that you will prioritize your short and long-term goals from the brainstorming list and return the emailed form to us on December 14th. And include your homework, which is going to identify what the best day might look like, your perfect day in your community, your region, what you would invite your neighbors, your family to go and experience your community. What does that day look like? And that is a day of activities identifying the highlights of your 3 communities here. And so where would you tour? What would you do? Provide us a little summary of what your perfect day would be in your region to entertain folks from out of town. That basically tells us what's really important to you that you would share with folks that you love. And that little synopsis will be part of our better understanding of your community. We will prepare a summary of the findings from the recommendations, and we'll provide a list of resources to the community in January. Our report we don't have a specific date, but in January 2021, we will be providing a summary of all of our recommendations. And we are looking for the community to participate on the 2021 Rivertown Review Summit. And that date is yet to be determined later in 2021. Andrea, can you have anything you'd like to add to that?
If you can hear me, some additional homework that will be on the list on the email that you're going to get. We would like you to identify other opportunities or thoughts, ideas that occur to you after you leave this presentation. You're going to go out, you're going to go home, and you're going to say, oh, I should have thought of this, I should have thought of that. Now that we've got you thinking about it, you may see things in a different light. So we invite you to try to capture those ideas and share them with us as part of your homework. Also, we'd like you to visit the two websites. Yes, the ORRT website and also the Lewis and Clark Trail website. We will be sending along those links. And also how to utilize those particular sites for your benefit. And we would also like to know if there are other partners or stakeholders, people, user groups that would be interested in this effort so that we can continue to build the community around identifying outdoor recreation opportunities and tourism. You know, COVID has really affected everyone, everywhere, but we see this as a real opportunity to build upon something that we can actually do during times of COVID, and that's outdoor recreation. Another opportunity to increase the visibility of your communities and provide your communities something to help rebuild yourselves after we get out of this particular situation. So in addition to describing the perfect day, we'd ask you to think of other contexts, come up with other ideas, visit the two websites, and fill out the form for prioritizing those brainstorming goals.
We basically have come to the end of the overall presentations and discussions for input, but we definitely would invite any questions that folks may have, and we will do our best to respond. Are there questions from the participants?
Well, while people are figuring out their questions, I just wanted to thank the National Park Service, our friends from Cincinnati and Aurora, but also I wanted to thank Jim Epperson for encouraging the communities along the Ohio River in southern Indiana to actively participate. You know, there's so many folks that we could thank. You know, I think the whole Lewis and Clark piece, as I said in my chat, is just fascinating. And I think Derek and also Jim Mallory is online, and Jim is the foundation chair for the National Lewis and Clark Historic Trail Foundation. I think that's the proper term. And, you know, one of my pieces in the chat that Andrea asked us to do was, right now there isn't a Eastern headquarters for the National Historic Trail, and maybe Southern Indiana should be such. And let's have a Lewis and Clark National Historic Museum along with Origin Park and at the Falls of the Ohio, and celebrate this Eastern legacy. I can't say enough about Russ and Andrea and our students. They work very closely with them over the time, and it's just a pure pleasure. So I look forward to the results of all these polls. And is there anybody else who would like to be unmuted and say any comments, thoughts? Just unmute yourself and turn on your video. Well, if nobody's going to do this, we'll just call on Brewster for any final comments. Mr. Brewster Rhodes, do you have any final thoughts about this past 2 hours?
Well, I think it was excellent input from the students, especially. I thought they were very insightful, and the video is just fantastic, and we look forward to marketing that through our tools, our own website and our Facebook page, et cetera. But I would really encourage folks to pick up on what you've been asked to do, which is describe the perfect day when you have an out-of-town visitor. What would you want to make sure they experience in your community, especially in areas of outdoor recreation? What would you like them to do so that their reaction is, wow, I had no idea you guys had so many wonderful opportunities for us to be outside doing things that are healthy, connect us to nature. And gee, I might want to move here because I want to be close to the opportunities that you guys currently have and or are developing. And what we intend to do is to take, to work with you all in taking that input, and for your communities and every other one eventually up and down the Ohio from Portsmouth to West Point, is to have a section on our website for each community which highlights what a perfect day would be in your community. So you guys would be the first folks, actually our pilot project for how do we make it very exciting and readable and digestible to have through you all share, what a perfect day would be in your community. We'll use that as a model for 40 other river communities along the Ohio River Recreation Trail. We think that'll really connect with folks. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Brewster. I have one more person to call on. And Andrea, as she mentioned earlier, is working with the National Park Service, but they have another grant, another project in our region with the 5 counties. And Rita Shrouds is online, and Rita is going to convene a meeting on December 4th, I think is the date, to look at trails around the 5-county area and how the Floyd and Clark County can be connected to the other counties. Rita, can I call on you to talk a little bit about that initiative? And if not, we'll rely on Andrea.
No, thank you very much. I'd be happy to, and let me turn on my video here. Align Southern Indiana is a collaborative venture between Clark, Floyd, Harrison, Scott, and Washington counties. And one of the foundational areas of focus that were identified was quality of place. And so for us, we've taken on the quality of place and actually focusing our efforts on trails in the 5-county areas. Our event will be a virtual workshop on December the 4th, which Andrea will be the speaker for that. We have about 60 people signed up for it at this particular point in time, which we feel is great. And again, it's just been our pleasure to work with Andrea to try to bring some connectivity as well as to bring some interest in the trail system in the 5-county areas. We will be announcing a grant that's been given to us to pursue marketing and the mapping of those trails. So we're very, very happy with the progress we're making and appreciate the opportunity to bring that information forward. So thank you very much.
Rita, if people want to participate in that meeting and sort of connect the river to the rest of the communities, do they contact you or do they just go on a line webpage? What's the best way to do that?
I'm going to put the link to the individual who's taking the reservations, which happens to be on this call with us now. And so I'll go ahead and put that in the link, and you can use that then to register.
Well, I thank you very much. I think You know, I'm always interested in tri-state initiatives or multi-state. The folks up in Cincinnati did a fascinating initiative under the leadership of Andrea also, and they called it the Tri-State Trails Coalition. And it might be an interesting model for us down here to really, you know, I'm tickled to death that Southern Indiana is getting their act together and planning the comprehensive trail process. But how does that work in a Kentuckiana version, you know, and how can we maximize the relationships between Louisville and Southern Indiana? And I hope Andrea talks a lot about the Tri-State Trails program when she is talking on December 4th.
Thank you, David, for reminding me. I meant to bring that workshop up, so thank you very much. And thank you, Rita, for filling everyone in. I think that about wraps up our time here. I want to thank everybody for your participation. It was a really great workshop. This is different than the other Rivertown reviews we've done because of the scope of it, but I think it went really well. And we would appreciate any comments that you have. And everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Certainly, thank you very much. And a few of us are going to stay online to debrief our meeting. If you want to sort of see the inner workings of our little committee, you can stay online. But thank you very much for the attendance and the ideas. And I look forward to the work that Faith, you're going to combine all this stuff into one report and give it to Andrea and Russ for editing. So good job, Faith. Thank you very much. I would say just let's wait a couple more minutes. We have a few folks for the U of L students who are still on. You did a good job.
Yes.
I just wish to thank you very much. And Russ and I will get your grades together sometime, hopefully before Christmas. But don't worry about it. Well, we have a few observers of our call, which is totally fine. I thought it went well. I was pleased with the participation. It'd be interesting to see how many people were actually from New Albany, Jeffersonville, and Clarksville. We had a variety of people from around the community, but I thought it went well. Any other observations or any thoughts?
Thank you, Helen, for all that work. That was a tremendous amount of effort in a short period of time.
That was crazy.
That was crazy.
That was crazy. Nobody knew who was doing what, and we were duplicating, and yeah.
Well, there were a lot of good ideas generated. I just hope that they weren't shortchanged in the need to, you know, get to a final 10. But I do think those poll results will give us something valuable to look at.
Yeah, and I think that we should include the raw data from the SWOT too, just so that they can look back on it if there's some specific ideas that didn't rise to the top.
Yeah, so behind the scenes, y'all, I was emailing a spreadsheet to Russ and Andrea to help, you know, pull out the big ideas for the 10 entries under each category, which basically means we have a spreadsheet that has everything that was recorded in the chat box. And here at the end, I also did that for the brainstorming. So that's in there too. And it looks like there are 35 of those. So a lot of good, I mean, they aren't attached to the individual contributor's name the way they will be in the record of the chat box, but they are all here.
Well, I'd be most interested in hearing from Jim especially, and also you, Austin. To what extent did you find this to be a productive process? Because you're the ultimate client.
Jim, if you want to go ahead first.
Yeah, sure. Affirmed some things, certainly, that we knew to exist. I think there's it's always good for people in multiple communities to hear what's being said, especially from people from outside. I worried, and my worry came true, that New Albany did not show up for this, and I will be using that because they're great about coming and asking us for money for things like outdoor recreation projects, but then not collaborating when they have an opportunity. So I wish that they could have been on here to hear some of the comments coming from people not from Clarksville, not from Jeffersonville, especially, that there are some things that are universal, and they maybe, you may think that they're a bad idea because they came from Jeffersonville, but hey, here's other people saying yeah, so that's my quick takeaway.
Well, just to let you know, we did have at least one person from New Albany, even though he might not have been an elected official, Al Gorman, who runs the Carnegie Center there. And so he was participating, but.
I was looking for somebody from redevelopment or from parks in the city, and they were all invited and none of them showed up.
Well, Jim, just kind of echo what you were saying there as far as your final comments about the stigma. I think that's a big challenge when we look at utilizing and developing the resources here from the local perspective. But that doesn't necessarily exist when we're looking at folks that may be passing through that are coming from 5 or 6 hours away that don't know any different. They've not grown up thinking like, well, shoot, if you go a half mile across that river, it's a whole new world. No, it's their ignorance is bliss in this case, right? And that's an opportunity for us. So, it's sometimes changing that local mindset that's the hardest, but there's opportunities there to kind of play upon those resources that currently exist that folks just don't know about. So, kind of taking one of those challenges and trying to flip it into an opportunity there. Brewster, you mentioned me being perhaps one of the kind of the ideal client, so to speak. I'm a resident. I live here in Jeffersonville, lifelong Louisville native, one of the few that made the big jump across that crazy, intimidating, terrifying bridge that no one wants to go across. And it's not that bad, really. Not only that, but decided to start a family here. I've had the opportunity to travel all over the world. I've been to 40 different countries. I've guided all over the world. I've lived in a number of different places, but have come back to Louisville for a number of different reasons. In full disclosure, I mean, our hearts, my wife and we have an 8-month-old son. We're constantly looking, all right, where's the next place? Where are we moving to? Helena, Montana, right? That's where we're going to move to because they have miles and miles of trails, like at the end of every street. But we're not sure on the timing of that or if it will even happen in the long run. So it's really exciting to hear all of this potential opportunity here, and that folks, there are at least a handful of folks, at least maybe 46 folks that recognize that. And sometimes that's all that it takes. So it's exciting. I mean, I wasn't late for the meeting, but there was a reason my video wasn't on at the beginning, and that's because I go out for a bike ride oftentimes early in the morning. And lately I've been really enjoying my time watching the sunrise as I bike through downtown Jeffersonville along the river and then make my way up to the Big 4 Bridge and then head into Louisville to go ride the trails in Cherokee Park. I'm willing to bike, 6 miles from my home in Jeffersonville, 6 miles to go ride the trails there. But how sweet would it be if I could stay on this side of the river and ride 6 miles of trails there, or 10 miles or 12 miles or whatever? I might think about sticking around longer. My family might think about sticking around longer. More families might be attracted to a place that is affordable
and has outdoor recreational activities. So and opportunities. So I'm excited. I'd like to think I get it, and that everyone in this room kind of gets it. And I'm incredibly excited to see of these ideas, what comes to fruition. Obviously, some are more low-hanging fruit than others, and some are kind of pie in the sky. But there seems like there's a lot. Nothing out there was super crazy, right? I mean, I think all these things seem attainable. So, anyways, I'll kind of end with that and just trying to put a punctuation mark, an exclamation mark on this with some positivity, which there was no shortage of today. But again, I'm excited to be a part of this and to see what comes to fruition, because there's a lot of potential here.
Thank you.
Great. I would like to echo that, especially what you were saying, Jim, and you had told us in the beginning that one of the challenges is getting the communities to work together. And especially in this process where you do have people from the outside, I don't know the difference between Clarksville, Jeffersonville, and New Albany. And I don't know where most of the resources are that people were talking about. I don't know which community that specifically lies in. And so I'm a perfect representative of the people that would be coming to your town. And so, yeah, I understand that there are those challenges of communities working together. And this was an opportunity. So thank you for putting it out there to them. The fact that they chose not to maybe necessarily partake in this part of it, there's still hope for the future. And you've given them that opportunity. So you're doing your job.
I have two thoughts. One is when I looked at New Albany and I looked at, the county plan, tremendous plans, and so how this next version of the 5-county plan really links all that together, is going to be a challenge to try to sort of ferret through, because the whole 10th Street Park down there is just a wonderful idea, or the extension of Silver Creek and the bicycle trail up through there, and the connection with Charleston State Park and Rose Island Amusement Park. It goes on and on and on. And so I just think it's so incredibly positive and optimistic. And I just wanted to give a shout out for Austin. Austin runs one of the largest bicycle events probably in the Midwest United States, called Bourbon and Burn, where people like to bicycle and drink bourbon. But thousands of people apply, it's fascinating. So how can we have something like that, really featuring our 3 or 4 or 5 cities right here and have a cross river deal? But I'm a fan of festivals. I'm a fan of group gatherings, and Austin does it well. So Austin, figure out how to work with all of us. Jim has a hot air balloon, so we could attach a bicycle to a hot air balloon even, just a thought.
Hey, I am open to getting creative with things. I've got kind of a long history of that. So you give me the resources to work with, and I'll come up with some creative ideas. Some of them may be better than others, but hey, let's use what we got,
Well, let's go on around the room here and see if anybody has any final comments. Russ, do you have another 50-minute talk you want to give?
He's on mute.
You're on mute, Russ.
No, I do not have any more to say. I am basically, as Andrea's sidekick, I'm talked out.
Hey, I'll jump in, David. First of all, just congratulations to Jim and Austin for putting this together. My first thoughts are this needs to be thought about as a marathon. So some of the experiences you guys have in your community are identical to what Brewster and I have experienced in Greater Cincinnati, what I see here in Southeast Indiana. A little parochialism often is in every community, but here's one idea that Brewster and I were involved with you might want to look into. We had this thing called Great Outdoor Weekend in Greater Cincinnati, and it was basically a weekend sampler. And I thought about that maybe for SoIN. rather than having one big event that's very labor intensive, everybody has their trails, their feature, put together a marketing campaign that happens all, you feature everybody on one weekend. You kind of have a passport and you bounce around, and it may be a low hanging fruit way to introduce other venues to people who haven't been into the next community or across the river. But hey, I'm looking forward to our summit next year when we can get together in person and do more of this brainstorming and best practice sharing.
To follow up on what Jack said there, Jim, Jack and Brewster and the Cincinnati people put out this magazine that has all of the outdoor recreational stuff, and it's a fundraiser. So they sell ads. They've done it for quite a number of times. The format's all there. And could Southern Indiana and Louisville work together and create a similar structure? And Brewster can send us the template. And what you did up there, Brewster's, they put it in every marina, every bike store, every boat store. It's just a wonderful magazine.
And of course, it has an online presence as well. So it's a digital flip book and with links that are all live. And so it's great. It's like 64 pages. It's basically everything you need to know or would want to know about what's available to do outdoors in the region, both sides of the river, 5 counties.
And they make a fortune off of it. They make enough money that he can
barely
afford a
break
house
even.
in Southern Florida. Oh,
barely break even.
Another opportunity, this was done in Muskingum County in Southern Ohio. And it was a collection of all of the outdoor recreation opportunities in that county. And then they made it so they could do a passport program where they go around and every year they have different locations that you have to go to fill your passport, like a hiking spree or a park spree. But all of the information in one spot, the tourism people put this together, and it's very popular.
Mr. Barnett, any final thoughts? Any, what do you think?
Well, one of the disadvantages that we've had on doing it on a Zoom call is here you had 40 some people and the comments were coming in so quick, it's hard to reflect on any of them. And so I think when we send something out, we need to emphasize that we're still looking for new ideas. We're still looking for strengths and weaknesses, and give people an opportunity to feed off of what they are reading, and hopefully you'll get a more robust response. So, for example, we prioritized Jeff Boat, but did not prioritize 2 other equally important, in my mind, sites, the Origin Park and the QRS properties weren't mentioned. Well, I don't think that anybody would think that the Origin Park, being almost 8 times larger than Jeff Boat, is not important, but it was just didn't come up. And so those are kinds of my observations of kind of the disadvantage of doing it this way. On the other hand, the advantage of doing it is that in 2 hours, you've got a lot of input, and even the questions where we couldn't prioritize our top 3, it still came out. You could see what we're getting the most votes, and you still could prioritize just as you did for the first 2 questions. So there's advantages and disadvantages, but I think we can overcome some of those disadvantages by how you structure that follow-up, making it as easy as possible for people to add ideas, and you need to emphasize that.
Yeah, we have a form that helps them to prioritize for the brainstorming piece. And then we also ask them specific questions. Is there anybody else that should be involved? Are there any other ideas that you have that have come up because of what you heard on the webinar? And And what's the other thing that we had? Oh, that describe a perfect day piece too. So, you know, we try to spell it out so that they can provide us with more input.
You know, the piece that I found interesting that didn't come up at all, Jim, is the big power plant in New Albany. You know, that's going to change radically as they change their fuel source, and the whole natural area around the power plant. You know, it's just a fascinating thing that here you have this power plant with, you know, a nature preserve attached to it that's unconnected to everything else. And so how, you know, and sometimes those power plants have a fair amount of money to connect to the community and to buffer the community. And so how that piece fits down there in New Albany, that could be a funding source for a long term for outdoor recreation.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I just posted, by the way, links to the Adventure Cruise Guide to the Outdoors. And then, of course, of the Great Outdoor Weekend from this past fall, which actually became a week of events, Jack. So bottom line is it's a simple concept, and both of them have been very well received, and let you know what the heck you can do outdoors, all in one place, online.
And my final piece for the day, unless if somebody else has something, is Jim, at some time, we'd love to introduce you to the folks up there at South Bank Partners, because there's a guy, Bill Moreland, who is a director similar to you.
Jack Moreland.
But he's been there, you know, just as long as you have almost, and is grappling with some of the same issues, and somehow has access to money, big bucks, but maybe there's a way of the two regional groups working together. I don't know. Do you know Jack?
Yep. No, I don't.
Oh. Brewster, maybe you could take it upon yourself to introduce the two of these folks together.
I'm happy to. I think it'll be very helpful, Jim. He's a pretty wild and crazy guy. I mean, he used to be the superintendent of Covington schools, and he's very deeply connected to the community. But I mean, he's gotten these 5 or 6 communities to really collaborate. And frankly, the main thing they collaborate on so far has been the development of what will become, I think, not world-class, but a very amazing network of roads that connect all the communities and go along the Ohio River, go along the Licking River, and make it a place that people throughout the region want to go and experience, as opposed to sticking on your side of the river. So it's really done a good job in attracting and retaining talent as well.
You know, and in many ways, the two are similar, because Southern Indiana has much better restaurants on the river than Kentucky does by far. And it's the same thing up there in Cincinnati. The Kentucky side has much better restaurants than downtown Cincinnati. You know, downtown Cincinnati is a concrete jungle with a few sports stadiums. And you want to go for good food, you go to Kentucky. And it's the same thing in Indiana. You know, it's the same thing for us. We have, you know, I guess we do have Joe's Crab Shack. But similarities. There's a baby.
Yes, that's the future of connecting trails to the river.
That's, yep. If we have anything to do with it, that's absolutely right. Yeah, and I should say my son, his name is Jack as well. He's already been on numerous bike rides across the Big Four Bridge. He loves just gazing at the water. I mean, he gets a little upset if I interrupt him during his meditations, just staring at the river. So he already has a connection to this place and to the river and the biking along the river. So you're right, future's right here in the right, dude.
And has he gone swimming in the river yet?
He has not yet been baptized in the Ohio River. That needs to happen. You're right. He's been in other rivers, but not the Ohio yet. But,
well, Austin, you can bring him to our Great Ohio River Swim, which we had to cancel this year for COVID, but this will be our like a 14th year. We get 200 people swim across the river to Newport and swim back. Nothing nothing deals with the issue of water quality better than 200 people jumping in the river, getting out and saying what a great experience it was.
Yeah.
No report will communicate as positively as swimmers being satisfied and enjoying themselves.
Faith, you haven't said anything. Do you have any observations of this meeting before we cut off?
No, I think it went really well, and I really loved seeing the students' input and just their observations, and I think that will be really helpful in the report outs. Yeah, I'm hopefully Andrea and I will talk today a bit more about those report outs and getting those finalized and sent out. So
we'll have the student papers done by hopefully the end of this week, and we'll send them on to you, Russ. I was going to send them to you, Jim, as well, but Russ mentioned that it might be just as easy to incorporate them into the final report. If you want to get the individual reports, I certainly can send them to you, but as of now, I was only going to forward them to Russ and to Andrea for inclusion in the final report. We also have 3 videos, which I'll share with maybe when we send out the overall pieces. We can send out the 3 student videos of their classic day trips. Looks like you're getting ready to say something, Russ, or are you just getting ready to turn the machine off?
I'm getting ready to turn the machine off. Here, go ahead, Russ. Too many, Russ.
We also have the 4th video, the one that we showed today. So it'd be 4 videos that we'd be sending.
You know, that 4th video is an interesting piece. The library is not open except for homeless people. That homeless individuals can call up and register to use one of the computers in the library. And so the audience for it now is the security guards at the library who all love it, and the homeless folks who come in and use the computers. And so they're a bit, you know, they don't mind sharing the preview right now. They don't want to have it go widely yet, because they're afraid that people are just going to come to the doors and say they want to see it. And right now it's closed. So the answer is, at least as of now, people are welcome to share it via email, but let's not post it on social media until we have an idea of when the library will be open. And so there's really one announcement.
I have a question. Scott Martin sent me an email and he was interested in the slides. I guess he means the PowerPoint. And I asked him if he just wanted the walkability scores, because that's what his title was, or all the slides. He said he'd take them all. So who is the keeper currently of the PowerPoint? Russ, do you have the most, Russ Clark, do you have the most updated PowerPoint?
Yes, I have that, and I can forward you the complete PowerPoint if you want to send it on to him.
Okay, I know that I have
You have an earlier version, yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Jack and Brewster, if you don't know, Scott Martin is one of these big park developers using private funds, which might be some of the issue with New Albany, as he has access to a lot of money and is not taking over, but have absorbed several New Albany parks in their overall park plan. And there's a little contention between that, I think, if that's might be accurate, Jim, but they've raised significant dollars for Origin Park, you know, and so we just hope that they can work together somehow better down the roads. Big dollars. Thank you very much. I thought it was a very good day. I'm looking forward to it. If anybody really wants to, we have another phone call at 4 o'clock, another Zoom call for the Ohio River Recreation. No, let's see, it's the Ohio River Basin Management Plan. That's at 4 o'clock.
You scared me. I didn't know we had a meeting, so.
You weren't on that one, Andrea. Take care. And
Okay.
Helen, did you record this? Is that yes?
It says it's still recording up here in the upper left.
Well, I'm recording it on mine. You started yours also?
Yes.
Okay, because I started mine. I cut in. I didn't get all of Jim Epperson's comments at the very beginning. So maybe you and I could work together to create a better version, and we'll cut out this final.
Sure. I think I started recording about the time you said we were recording, which I think was pretty early on.
Okay,
So,
sounds great.
And happy birthday, Russ, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you all.
Good job.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Bye.